So I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar this morning on social isolation and loneliness. And from our webinar last week, Michaela, you gave us a lot of information that can help us all year round. And I'm presuming that might happen again today. So Michaela is with the North Range Behavioral Health Group and with also working with Age Connections.
Acts of Connection.
Acts of Connections, excuse me. And as a reminder, we're AgeWise Colorado. We're here to help you find the resources that you need when you need them, sometimes hopefully beforehand, and also educate you through these webinars and the articles that we have on our website. We are a nonprofit organization. We're all volunteers and we're here to help. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Michaela.
My name is Michaela Sanchez, as Barb mentioned. I do work with North Range Behavioral Health, and I'm also, the other hat that I have that I'm wearing today is that I'm a member of the Thriving Weld Healthy Mind and Spirit Committee that exists in Weld County. And we are focusing on the importance of social connection in our lives as a form of trying to help people thrive throughout the year. So I'd like to ask you, I know that we kind of do the mute, but part of creating connection, and if Barbara, this doesn't work, we can skip it. But part of the creating connection is really just making connections with each other. And I was wondering if maybe we can take our mute off for just a moment and go around and introduce ourselves to each other, just so we know who we're in the virtual room with. Is that something that would be okay?
And I'll just call them out from the screen. Can we start
great.
with Jay?
Hi, this is Jay Staten. I live in Nathrop.
Wonderful, thank you.
And I have some more participants coming in. Give me just a minute. This is great. Okay, next one is Chris.
Hello, I'm Chris Shell. I live in Sterling, Colorado.
Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for joining us from Sterling. Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Bryant. I do a couple of things here in senior care, but about to open up a home modification company next month, and very interested in this topic.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you. Douglas?
Yeah, I'm with UC Health, University of Colorado, and I'm an older adult research specialist, so I have an interest in this subject and just thought I'd listen in.
Okay, wonderful.
Brittany?
Hi, I'm Brittany Weirs. I am from Centennial Mental Health. I work with Chris, and I really just thought this would be something interesting to listen to.
Great. And I just lost my screen. Michaela, can you take over for a minute?
Yeah, I'm looking to see. I think mine is set up a little bit different. So maybe if somebody wants to jump in, anybody who hasn't introduced themselves yet, because my order is different.
I see your name.
Hi, this is Rick Martin. I'm part of the Denver Metro and I'm a CPA. Thanks.
Welcome, Rick.
Beth, how about you?
Hi, I'm Beth and I live in the Baker neighborhood of Denver.
Wonderful. Is that everyone?
And Pat? Is Pat still here? Well, maybe Pat will introduce himself a bit later.
Yeah. Thank you for taking time. You know, it's one of those things where we are blessed with the gift of technology, and we are also realizing that technology can kind of be one of those things that can either be a protective factor or a risk factor when it comes to connection. And so we really just wanted to at least recognize that there's somebody behind that screen, hear a voice, and maybe where you were from. So I appreciate you participating in that. I also want to thank Greeley Interfaith Association and Intermountain Health for their support of this project. Both of them have been generous in being able to help us get this off the ground. This project is a collaboration between a lot of nonprofits in Weld County, and we're all giving our in-kind time and resources to this. So any time that we can get support from the general community is really appreciated. So, you know, I wanted to go over today's agenda. Today, we're going to identify the importance of connection, recognize or learn how to recognize loneliness in ourselves and others, talk about being intentional around overcoming loneliness or isolation in our own lives. And I think the key word there is intentional. This is a topic that many of us understand on a broad sense, and it seems very natural to think of it, but the intentionality behind making connections really is something that can be life-changing. And we'd like to consider ways to overcome our own loneliness and isolation in our own lives and our community during the holiday season. Before we get started, I'd also like to pause to give you a moment to either find a pen and paper. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just something to jot a couple notes down as you're going along. Or you can open up a document on your own screen just to take notes, and we'll be completing an activity or two, very simple, throughout the workshop. So just take a moment to do that. Now, Barb, as they're getting that, the next thing that I'm going to do is we're going to go to a slide where we're going to watch a video from the Surgeon General. And so I'm hoping that the audio works when I share. If not, I may have to reshare and check the audio, but we'll see.
I'll give you a head nod.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go on to the next slide here. Hopefully everybody had a chance to grab a pen or open up a doc. So why are we here today? Acts of Connection is an initiative that aims to respond to the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory that we are currently in an epidemic of loneliness and isolation in our country. And that strengthening our social connections is actually going to give us protective factors that increase our health outcomes and help us live happier, healthier lives. So here's a quick video from the Surgeon General, and cross your fingers that it's going to work. If not, hold on a minute, y'all. I'm going to go and do it the back way here, because I don't think it worked. We're just going to pull it up.
Not hearing anything, Michaela.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and just grab it here. Hopefully. Let's see. This is the Surgeon General release right here. But let me try to pull it up this way. Hold on just a minute. Surgeon General.
Loneliness is far more than just a bad feeling. Being socially disconnected, which can range
Can
from
you hear
being
it?
alone to being
Yep.
isolated,
Okay.
is bad both for individual and societal health. Research shows that loneliness and isolation are associated with a greater risk of heart disease, dementia, stroke, depression, anxiety, and premature death. In fact, lacking connection can increase the risk of premature death to levels comparable to smoking daily. Loneliness and social isolation are also far more common than we might realize. About 1 in 2 American adults report experiencing loneliness. Everyone can be impacted across all ages, socioeconomic conditions, and geographies. This widespread disconnection presents profound threats to our health and well-being. Social connection is as fundamental to our mental and physical health as food, water, and sleep. And it affects our performance and productivity at work, school, and in our communities. Now is the time to invest in building social connection. This first ever Surgeon General's advisory on our epidemic of loneliness and isolation shows us how. The keys to connection are simple. Answer a phone call from a friend. Invite someone over to share a meal. Listen and be present during conversation. Seek out opportunities to serve others. These steps may seem small, but they're extraordinarily powerful. By strengthening our relationships, we can improve our heart and brain health, reduce our risk of diabetes and high blood pressure, boost our immune systems, and lower our risk of depression. We can build lives and communities that are healthier and happier. And we can ensure our country and the world are better poised than ever to take on the challenges that lie ahead. Visit surgeongeneral.gov/connection to learn more.
Okay, go ahead and stop that. And that's really what is prompting the movement of acts of connection. We see it especially right now in the holidays, right? We know that we become hyper aware of our depth and breadth of connection during this holiday season, but that doesn't mean that it's not something to look at for the rest of the year. I wanted to go ahead and share a couple of statistics around the rates and the health effects. So these are mentioned in the Surgeon General's report, and I can send that link to you at the end of the presentation. So 3 in 5 US adults, 61%, reported feeling lonely before the pandemic. So that was a statistic that was pulled probably in 2019, 2018. So knowing what we know about our post-COVID world, I can imagine that that number may have increased. I don't have any data to support that, but being a human walking around in this world that we know that has changed a little bit, it might be, a presumption to be able to make that. So 79% of young people reported feeling lonely at least some of the time in 2021. I don't know if that really surprises anybody either, right? So again, these rates are, and the topic of loneliness and social isolation is something that's not groundbreaking when you think about whether or not it's already in our awareness. It's the intentionality behind what we do about it. Less than 20% of people who are lonely or isolated recognize it as a major problem. And this is a really key statistic that our team holds on to when we're working on what our messaging is and what our why is for this program or for this project. If people are experiencing loneliness and social isolation and it's impacting their health, and less than 20% of people who are experiencing that recognize it as a major problem, then how do we change? How do we heal, right? So this project that we're doing here is really about raising awareness and understanding that we're all in this together, and maybe we may experience this at some time throughout our lives or even throughout the day, and be able to figure out how we can bring some connection into our lives to help us be healthier. Loneliness and social isolation are related to increased risk of dementia by 50%, heart disease by 29%, and stroke by 32%. So again, these are numbers that are in the Surgeon General's report. There's also an increased risk of anxiety, depression, and suicide. Now, some people, when we share this information with people, they ask, well, where is more data coming from? And to be really honest, there's not a whole lot of local data available. There may be data on a national level, but when you're wanting to go hyper-local into your communities and see where the best methods are for responding, we don't really have a whole lot of local information. I do believe that now that the Surgeon General's report is out there, that it is gaining traction and people are paying attention. And so that will probably change over the next couple years. But if there's something in your community where you're involved in to be able to help make those decisions, that this would be a really important realm to focus on in your community health survey. I know that Weld County will be doing that in the coming year. So, loneliness and social isolation, sometimes we think of it as the same thing. We believe them to be the same, but there are differences. Social isolation is the lack of adequate connections to one's family, friends, or community. And it can be caused by physical, like mobility issues, or internal social anxiety limitations. Whereas loneliness is a subjective feeling of disconnection. It's a feeling of being alone, misunderstood, not cared for, not seen. It's one of those things where you can be in a room full of people and still feel lonely. And I'm sure each of us have felt that at one point or another. Feeling both of these experiences from time to time in our lives is normal. It's when we are feeling it at an increased rate or it's impacting our ability to live, laugh, and love. So I would like to kind of consider 3 different scenarios that I'm going to pitch to you. And if you listen to the scenario, they'll be really simple. Think about whether that individual is experiencing social isolation or loneliness. And then if you can throw that in the chat, we can kind of review and ponder those answers together. Barb, I may have a hard time seeing the chat, so if you can kind of monitor that for me, I would really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay. So scenario 1. Melissa, a single mother of 2 toddlers, spends her days juggling work and childcare. She has no friends or community to really have activities to go to, which leaves her with little adult interaction. What do you think Melissa is experiencing?
Let's see everyone writing in the chat. We've got a social isolation.
Okay.
Another one.
Okay. And I would agree. I would think that, there's some social isolation there. It could be that she is, maybe she does spend her days juggling work and childcare. And so maybe at work, she's even experiencing a little bit of loneliness, maybe feeling alone or misunderstood. Maybe she's experiencing things with motherhood that don't really feel appropriate to share, in the work setting. Or maybe she's experiencing things at work that she really can't share with anybody at home. But there is also that social isolation of having those connections of people who become a support system. Okay, I'm going to do a second scenario. Barbara, a retired school teacher, fills her time volunteering at a local library and participating in a full schedule. She misses the close bonds, however, that she had with her former coworkers and students. What do we think Barbara is experiencing?
I'm seeing a loneliness, disconnected from others.
Mm-hmm.
Loneliness, yeah.
And, I think that that's a really good one to kind of ponder a little bit, because the loneliness being a subjective feeling of disconnection. If we think about what that scenario said, is that she is retired and fills her time volunteering and participating in a full schedule. So the social isolation, right, the connections to community are there, but the feeling of being understood, seen, and belonging may not necessarily be as strong as she would need or want. Okay, third, Alex spends his free time writing poetry and creating digital art. Although he's passionate about his hobbies, he's never joined a local writers group or an online art forum. What might Alex be experiencing?
Social isolation.
That one does feel a little bit more towards the social isolation. I would agree. Now, thank you for participating in that. And honestly, there is no right or wrong answer, right? A lot of times, social isolation and loneliness, while they are separate and different, they do often co-occur. And so it becomes this kind of ball of emotion when you're trying to pick it out. But really, those scenarios are designed to just help us kind of organize them in our brain a little bit. But that doesn't mean that they occur separately in the human experience. So thank you for doing that with me. At the end of the day, the quality of relationships is key. So we kind of have talked about that, where maybe the retiree who has a lot of connections and a very full schedule, there may not be a lack of adequate connections throughout the day. But if she is not feeling that she is seen, understood, or supported, that may contribute to some of that subjective feeling of loneliness. So we have all felt lonely or isolated in one way or another, right? That's part of being here. And things that we might have experienced can lead to a couple of things. The first one is overwhelm. Many people feel a lot of pressure and stress right now. And sometimes just getting through the day can feel completely overwhelming. It may be too much for one person to handle on their own. And this is especially true with parents and caregivers, right? And when we talk about caregivers, caregivers of those who are younger than us, but caregivers of those who may be older than us too, or somebody that just needs to rely on us for their, their physical needs or just being a companion to them. You remember the adage, it takes a village to raise a child? Villages can be created in a lot of different contexts, we know. And so really that overwhelm can come from maybe not having that village to lean on. Anxiety and fear. One study suggests that loneliness may be linked to a heightened sense of fear in individuals, and that may impact a person's ability to strive or search out connection. As hard as it feels to feel lonely or self-isolate, it can actually be a way of protecting ourselves from a perceived threat. There might be some examples of heightened fear that kind of show up, that kind of put you in almost a fight, flight, or freeze mode. Some examples might be anxiety about re-entering society, going back into the reality that we do live in a post-COVID world. And there was a time when it was, shared that it was not safe to be connected with people physically. And while there's a time and place for that, we started to open things up, and it was almost like we were just kind of expected to just keep rolling after this huge pause happened. And so some people may be experiencing a little bit more anxiety about re-entering society or leaving home when it becomes your place of safety. We just went through, a pretty emotional election for a lot of people on both sides of the spectrum. We know that there are a lot of differing views, and that can come to create anxiety and fear in people and keep us separate, walk around with our hearts a little bit more closed than we would like them to be. There may be discomfort with big crowds or fear of travel. In the holiday season, there could be discomfort with the idea of seeing loved ones. Or if we don't have that ability to see them, maybe it's not seeing them, right? And now I'm trying to figure out how to connect in a way that just isn't what I want it to be. Avoidance and worry can also be something that comes from that feeling lonely or isolated, and really it becomes this feedback loop. So, you know, you may experience like decision fatigue. Some of us may find ourselves kind of stuck in that freeze mode with making decisions. The idea of making a decision might be overwhelming, and so it's just easier just to stop, right? I don't know where to go. I don't know what to join. I don't know who to call. It's just better if I just don't make a decision right now. I'll do it later. That is kind of the avoidance piece too. You know, it's hard to sometimes get back in the saddle again, right? And sometimes it's not very comfortable. And so when it becomes uncomfortable, it may be something that we kind of try to avoid. I just had a conversation with somebody who shared that they have a individual in their life that consistently asks them to keep going out and do things, and they don't really want to do it, but they do so to almost kind of keep their friend quiet. And when they go out with them, they sit there and then they realize, man, I really needed this. But it's getting over that initial hump, right? And trying not to avoid things. But there's also worry, you know. When we experience fear, worry is a natural byproduct. And so we may ask a lot of what if questions, imagining maybe the worst possible outcome, which can kind of throw us into like a loop of worry over and over again. There can also be physical changes that happen as a result of experiencing things. So we may have like a lack of focus or concentration. We may have changes in appetite. We may experience change in our sleeping habits. I know that happened with me. I'm really trying to focus this year on supporting my sleep and being very intentional about my sleep habits, because I can give my all to everything but me. And then that impacts how I show up in the world. And, you know, this worry, anxiety, fear, overwhelm kind of feedback loop can also affect our energy levels. The good news is that throughout human history, we have shown as human beings that we are stronger together. We know that. It is in our DNA that we're happier together. And we're more resilient when we lean on each other. We're hardwired for this. So we can create greater connection in our lives and those around us because it is a part of who we are. And sometimes I think maybe we just need to remind ourselves of this. So we, you know, I've kind of talked about some heavy stuff a little bit, and I want to take a moment just to kind of help reset our internal gauge here inside. So it's called a psychological sigh. And you know, in order to do this exercise, it's a very simple exercise. It actually helps to calm our nervous system. And so before we close our eyes for this exercise, I want to kind of explain what we're going to do today. So then once you are hearing me, you're comfortable doing it. So this physiological sigh is a breathing technique that we can use at any time. And it's really helpful if we might be experiencing overwhelm. Think about some of the uncomfortable feelings that might come up during this holiday season. Maybe we're in the store, maybe we're driving and we need to kind of pull over. Maybe we're in the kitchen, really trying to figure out how we're going to approach the family member in the living room without making things awkward. This is a tool that you can use. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't take any supplies. It's just you standing by yourself and really kind of trying to focus on things. So it's done by inhaling twice and then following it with a lengthier exhale. And the inhales are through your nose and the exhale is through your mouth. So I'm going to demonstrate. So it's in, out. In, out. Now I'll guide you through it once we close your eyes, but I just wanted to share that with you so you have that in the back of your mind. So if you don't mind, go ahead, get comfy. This will only be a few minutes long, and I promise you that you'll feel better when you open your eyes. So close your eyes, settle into your seat. And let's start with just 2 normal deep breaths. You don't have to make any sense of it, just 2 normal deep breaths. Inhale slowly through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Again, inhale slowly through your nose. Fill up your belly and your chest. And blow through your mouth. Let it go. Now just let your breath return to a natural pace. As you're breathing, relax the muscles around your face. Check your jaw and make sure that's loose. A lot of times we walk through the day with that tightened jaw. Release the tension from your arms and your hands. Let your spine touch the bottom of your seat as your pelvis becomes heavy. Feel your feet on the ground and let them be soft. Right now, there's nothing else to do. We have this time for ourselves, right? So take the time. We're going to go ahead and start with the breathing. And as a reminder, it's in, and then a long exhale. The inhale is through your nose, and the exhale is through your mouth. Okay, to sync up, we're all going to exhale the air out of our lungs, and then we're going to breathe. So exhale out, breathe in, out. In, out. In, out. Last one. In, out. Now just let your breath return to normal. Keep your eyes closed. Breathe at a nice, easy pace. Maybe your exhale is not as long as it was before. Go ahead and take your right hand and place it over your heart. And as you breathe at your gentle, natural pace, give your heart a little bit of a push there. Keep your body relaxed. And repeat to yourself silently after me. In this moment, I am safe. In this moment, I am supported. In this moment, I can find connection. Go ahead and put your hand down. Keep your body relaxed. And gently flutter your eyes back open. Come back. Thank you for doing that with me. You know, sometimes our days are so hurried and full of a lot of demands and things that we have going on in our mind. I know I'm a list maker, and so my day is filled with all the lists of things that I have to do. And sometimes I need to put taking care of myself and taking a moment for myself on that list, because it's just as important as all of the other things that I have on there. When we're doing a physiological sigh, we're actually stimulating that vagus nerve, and that helps to regulate our system, and it actually helps to bring us out of the fight, flight, or freeze mode. So again, imagine, it doesn't have to be as long as we've done it. It could just be you knowing that you need to be present in your body, and you're at the kitchen sink, and you close your eyes and you do 2 quick inhales and then a deep exhale through your mouth, and do that a couple times before you take the hors d'oeuvres out to have that conversation with somebody that you might feel a little tingly around, right? That can help you with it. It's so funny because I remember all of us growing up when people would say, take a deep breath, count to 10. It works. It's there for a reason. So we're going to go back to connection and talk about why it matters. You know, we talked about how human beings are biologically wired for connections, and that our brains really are have adapted to connect with each other. It is essential to survival as water, air, and food. You heard the Surgeon General share that. When we get lonely, it is a sign that we can use some meaningful connection. That is a symptom inside of ourselves that is telling us, I need some form of connection. Now, that can either be with ourselves or with others, because connection with ourselves also matters. Social connection and community, even in the smallest of ways, can be incredibly helpful in improving our mood, discovering belonging, and creating support systems for our health. It's not enough to say that we need it. We have to want it, and we have to pursue it and go look for it and hope to share it with others. That's what's going to get our country to a place where we're feeling connected again. Intentionality. The good news is that the data suggests that social connection can actually increase our odds of survival by 50%. I mean, something that increases your odds of survival by that high of a percentage that doesn't cost any money, and is, you know, just right at your fingertips, that is impressive. So here are some of the benefits that connection contributes to our lives and well-being. And it's interesting to see how we can be healthier than we realize just by connecting with each other. We can have stronger immunity, experience better self-esteem. We can lower our rates of depression and anxiety, have a longer life expectancy. Our cognitive function can actually improve through connection. We can gain more empathy and trust. This is pretty powerful stuff. And it sounds so simple, and it really is at the beginning, but to actually do it, it does take some you know, purpose and really focus on what it looks like. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So we want to better understand connection. We know that connection can be tough to measure. And this is where it gets tricky, because it's hard, you know, we want like a really black and white, cut and dry definition of what connection is and what it looks like when it increases. But a person's level of social connection is not simply determined by the number of close relationships that they have, because there are many ways for us to connect, right? So it's the variety of relationships, how often we may interact with people, the number of relationships, but it's also things that are extremely subjective. The degree to which we feel we can rely on others, the degree to which our relationships help us walk away feeling satisfied and positive. So we can have a lot of connections and friends, but if we're walking away feeling worse than when we got there, that is not a protective factor, right? But I may have 2 friends and know that I can call them at a drop of a dime, and when I do, I walk away feeling understood and that I belong. Connection is also on a continuum. So it's important to remember that just like so many other things with being human, the amount and quality of our social connection is not static. It can actually change constantly from day to day, even moment to moment. And it can be improved or compromised by a number of reasons, right? So if I feel extremely connected in the community that I grew up in, and then I move across the country, I will probably need to bolster my connection because I will have a decreased level of connection for some time. We've all fall somewhere on the continuum of connection though. And so it's important for us to remember that, because I think sometimes we think about other people experiencing challenges when we really want to talk about we all have experienced this from time to time. We may experience it all tomorrow at some point in time. And so normalizing that and having that conversation in a way where it's not, I'm more like helping you, but more of we are in this together, helping each other. And to remember also that temporary feelings of loneliness and social disconnection are actually part of being human. And it can be a good thing because it kind of gets you moving in a direction towards connection. What we want to minimize and bring down is the chronic loneliness and social isolation that some may be experiencing and that we may be experiencing now as a society. So the first step with creating connections starts with understanding ourselves. And there is a connection quiz that is validated and trusted here. I believe it's from UCLA. And so you can find it on our Acts of Connection website, and you can access it at any time. The link is actually in the chat, or you can scan it with the QR code on this slide. And I would like to just invite people to scan that or go to the link. It's a very short quiz. This is challenge by choice though. So that means that you can choose to opt out and not take it at this time if you're not comfortable taking it. But if you do choose to take the quiz, it will give you anonymous responses, and then the results are for you only. And it's just a picture of a moment in time of where your levels of connection are at this moment. Once we do take the quiz, for those of us that do, please know we're not going to share these results in the chat or with anybody else on here. This is simply for your own information. So if you can take just maybe a minute or two to look at that quiz, and remember that your score can change on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to spend the last couple minutes talking about how to create connection. And again, this is something that, we're talking about it for the holidays, but Barbara's right. This is something throughout the entire year. And like the Surgeon General said, things sound very simple. What we know to be true is it's the intentionality behind it. So investing in relationships, connecting to people who you may have fallen out of touch with can actually promote a sense of belonging and fulfillment. When we open up to others, it makes us feel heard and like we're not alone. So make relationships a priority by staying engaged and connecting regularly. Maybe reach out to a friend or a family member each day and make your interactions meaningful. Call a friend you haven't spoken with in a while to catch up. Reconnection should be mutually beneficial, right? And is most helpful when both of you are feeling safe and respected. But I know that I talked to an individual who said that there's him and his siblings and their mom lives alone across the country. And they all have made a commitment that they call her after work. And they all have a shift where at 5 o'clock, he's going to call. 5:30, sis is going to call. 6 o'clock, the other brother's going to call. And before you know it, she's been on the phone for 2 hours, off and on, feeling very full and loved and seen and important to the people that she cares about. And they are feeling good about it too. And it's something that they can depend on. Being intentional about it. Looking for ways to serve and support others. So find ways to help out, whether it's supporting your family, your coworkers, your friends, community service. At North Range, we support people recovering from substance use disorder. And a lot of times we talk about some of the most important steps to recovery is taking time to support others, right? Helping others, getting out of your own head and going out and being of service. Volunteering is a wonderful way to connect. We know that. But to bring that sense of purpose to yourself, maybe it's not volunteering. Maybe it's going and talking to your neighbor and helping them out, with picking up the leaves. Just yesterday, I was at Sam's Club. And there was a woman who was struggling with getting her rotisserie chicken, because that is something that sometimes you wait in line for. And she was trying to grab it and put it in the bag, and it was a challenge for her. And because I've been working on this project, I think I probably would have helped before, but I was more intentional about what I was doing. And I said, this is a moment for connection. This is an opportunity. And I asked her, can I help you? And she said, yes. And so I helped her. And then she asked for mashed potatoes. She didn't know where to find them. I didn't know where to find them. So then it was another opportunity for connection. There was another woman shopping. And I said, hey, do you know where they have the mashed potatoes? And before you knew it, the three of us were looking for mashed potatoes. We found them. We laughed about it. I don't know their names, but I felt better walking away from that moment. And there was that little bit of connection. Again, it's on a continuum way, right? So there may not be a depth to that, but in that moment, it bolstered my health. It bolstered how I showed up in the world and how I felt. Walking into Sam's was different than how I felt walking out of Sam's. Engaging with people of different backgrounds too is also very important. It broadens your understanding of the world and it enriches your relationships that you currently have too. Getting to know your neighbors. We talk a lot about this with the committee, that, sometimes our neighborhoods are not as lively as we would like them to be, right? Or what we remember. And it's one thing to say, that nostalgia kicks in and things just aren't like they used to be, or we can be a part of what we want to see, right? So, hosting those yard sales, getting it out there and inviting your neighbors to host one at the same time, or bringing May Day traditions back, right? Gosh, those are so much fun and we don't see those anymore, but that doesn't mean that they can't still happen. Exchanging baked goods. And I will be honest, I struggle with the neighbor piece. I grew up in a community that wasn't very safe. And so I didn't learn how to be a neighbor. And so I have noticed that my husband has to remind me and encourage me and teach me how to be a good neighbor, because it's not something that I grew up doing. But when I do it, it feels good. Joining social groups, right? And so interest groups, whether they're fitness clubs or those religious gatherings or the pickleball, right? Pickleball's all the rage. My dad does pickleball and he is the happiest person I've ever seen. You can check out your local library for different interest clubs. Join a class to learn a new skill. They have cooking groups. Meetup.com is, a resource that a lot of people have used over time. And so maybe there's something like that in your community. Cutting back on the things that make you feel disconnected. So, trying to reduce the habits that do lead to feeling isolated, like excessive social media use or unhealthy time spent in front of the screen, maybe watching the news, because of course, got 24 hours of news. They can handle it if we're gone for a couple hours. Extending kindness and respect to each other in those conversations and being thoughtful about how you're showing up in conversations. How can I make this interaction more positive? How does treating others with respect look like? And then model that for yourself. Living a values-aligned life can help you be more intentional about extending that kindness and respect to each other. Being responsive, supportive, and grateful. We have learned a lot about gratitude and how gratitude actually does support your wellness. What you focus on expands. And so really trying to bring that in, that actually kind of ties into like that connection with yourself. So then you can show up for others in a different way. And being present during conversations. We all know what that feels like when we're talking to somebody and we feel like they just kind of paused. I think there's a joke that says, if you're talking to somebody and they say, "Oh, that's crazy," stop talking. They stop listening. So, really trying to be intentional about how you're showing up in those conversations so people feel that they are seen. One thing that the Surgeon General offers for everyone is this 5 for 5 challenge. And I would encourage you to either write this down or go to the Surgeon General's website and type up 5 for 5 connection challenge and you'll find it. It really is simple. You just take a moment to connect, to either write down how you connected today. You don't even have to come up with goals of how you're going to connect. It's more like kind of like a gratitude journal, right? At the end of the day, how did I connect today? And how did that connection make me feel? So the Sam's Club example would be something that I would write here, and then I would reflect on how it made me feel. What we focus on expands. In the chat, or you can scan this QR code. There is a pledge to connect with Acts of Connection. And it's really one of those things that it's just a self-accountability thing. Pledge to be a person of connection. Make a promise to yourself that you're going to do this before these holidays start. And when things get tough or they get a little bit tricky, try to remember what you want to see in the world and be a part of that. And then Barb, if I could, I'd like to send you a workshop evaluation link, and it's in the chat, but maybe you can send it to the people who attended today. And if you guys could all fill that out, that would really help us. We're, really trying to get some data around what else we can offer in terms of information that's going to help people.
Absolutely. I'll send that out to everyone. I know we're at 12:30, which is, we said this would be an hour, but I would love to, if you have time, Michaela, and all of you who are on, does anyone have any questions for Michaela?
I know it was a lot of information, a lot to take in.
I guess I have a question, so I'll take advantage of the time. Are you handling this just for Weld County, or are there other organizations in other areas? Are you going to take it statewide? I mean, I see this as something that might be wonderful to extend to senior communities, especially assisted living communities, since, we're in that aging group.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, and one that we're actually asked often. This is really kind of a grassroots thing. It's a bunch of people from nonprofits getting together saying, what are we seeing that needs to be addressed in order for people to thrive, mentally and emotionally in our community? And what we found was the overlap was lack of connection. And then the Surgeon General's report came out and it was very affirming. So we're really working to try to create what that structure looks like. But if you look at our branding, it says actsofconnectionweld.org, Acts of Connection Weld. Our dream is for it to be Acts of Connection Morgan, Acts of Connection Larimer, Acts of Connection Boulder, Acts of Connection Arapahoe, right? There is room for it to grow throughout Colorado, and then for each region to kind of take what we've built and then adjust it to meet whatever their community needs are, because Weld is going to look different from Boulder, right? And we want to respect and honor that. So it is a very, we're in the very early stages of it right now. But at the end of the day, I think it's about, you know, if there's somebody who's interested in trying to bring something like this to your community, you can go to actsofconnectionweld.org and see how to get a hold of us. Or, you know, Barbara, if you can send my contact information to everybody, I'm happy to connect you.
And you can always find Acts of Connection on the AgeWise Colorado website.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much for putting us there. We appreciate it.
Well, if there's no other questions, I would thank everyone for participating. Michaela, thank you again for a most informative hour. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.